The council chambers had never been designed to hold chaos, but chaos had arrived anyway. Arya stood in the gallery above, watching as Cashin presided over the emergency session. Below, half the council seats sat empty, their former occupants now imprisoned, awaiting trial for conspiracy, embezzlement, and murder. 3 days had passed since Theron's arrest. 3 days of raids, interrogations, and revelations that shook the kingdom's foundation. The people were rioting in the streets, some celebrating the corruption's exposure, others terrified of the instability. Cashin looked exhausted. He'd barely slept, working through mountains of evidence, signing new orders, trying to hold together a government that was collapsing from within. But he was still standing, still fighting. Arya felt something shift in her chest. Pride, maybe. Or something more dangerous. You're staring. She turned to find Lyra beside her, now dressed in official council robes. The appointment had been swift. Cashin hadn't waited for tradition or protocol. He needed people he could trust, and Lyra had proven herself 100 times over. I'm observing, Arya said. Same thing. Lyra leaned against the railing. You know the nobles are talking. About you and him. Let them talk. They're saying you've bewitched him. That you're a Sylvanas spy who seduced the king to weaken his rule. Also not wrong, Arya admitted. Lyra laughed quietly. Fair. But they're also saying he's become dangerous. Unpredictable. That he's purging the council to install puppets. He's removing criminals. In their eyes, it's the same thing. Power is power. How you get it doesn't matter to most of them. Lyra's expression grew serious. Which means we need to move carefully. Theron had allies beyond the council. Military commanders. Noble houses. Merchants who profited from Omega oppression. What do you suggest? We need to show strength. Unity. And we need to get ahead of the Bloodstone rumors before they spread. Arya stiffened. What rumors? That the king possesses an ancient weapon. That he used it against Theron. People saw the light. Felt the power. Lyra's voice dropped. Fear makes people dangerous. If they think Cashin has something that can reshape the world, they'll either worship him or try to kill him. Probably both. Below, Cashin called for order as 2 council members started shouting at each other. His voice cut through the chaos like a blade, commanding, absolute. The room fell silent. He's good at this, Arya murmured. When he's not drowning in grief and self-loathing, yes. Lyra studied her. You're helping with that, you know. He's different when he looks at you. Less like a ghost wearing a crown. I don't know what we are. Figure out fast. Because the kingdom needs to see him as strong, stable, and in control. And right now, you're either his greatest strength or his most obvious weakness. That night, Cashin didn't send for her. For 3 nights running, he'd been too busy with council business, security briefings, emergency meetings. Arya told herself she didn't miss him. Didn't lie awake wondering if he was thinking about her too. But she did. Around midnight, she gave up on sleep and ventured into the palace. She'd been given freedom to move where she wanted now, no longer a prisoner, though what she was instead remained undefined. She found herself drawn to the gardens. The night was clear, cold, stars brilliant overhead. And sitting on a bench beneath an ancient oak, Cashin. He'd removed his crown again. His head was tipped back, eyes closed, face tilted toward the stars. He looked young like this. Almost peaceful. You're terrible at sneaking, he said without opening his eyes. Arya moved closer. I wasn't trying to sneak. Then why are you here? Couldn't sleep. You? Same. He opened his eyes, looking at her. I keep thinking about your father. About how I signed that order without question. Without investigating. I was so sure Theron wouldn't lie to me. You trusted him. I was lazy. Cowardly. His voice was bitter. I didn't want to deal with the complexity of ruling, so I let someone else make the hard decisions. And people died because of it. Arya sat beside him, careful to leave space between them. You were grieving Elena. Theron exploited that. That's not an excuse.
No.
But it's context.
She paused.
My father wouldn't have wanted you to destroy yourself with guilt. He would have wanted you to fix the system that allowed Theron to corrupt it. Cassian turned to her, and in the moonlight, his eyes were devastating. How are you this kind to me? After everything? I don't know. Maybe I'm tired of hating. Or maybe you're a better person than I deserve. I'm not good, Cassian. I came here for revenge. I would have killed you if I'd found the right moment. I know. That's what makes your choice to stay remarkable. His hand moved slowly across the bench, not quite touching hers. Close enough to feel the heat. I meant what I said.
About wanting you to stay.
To help me rebuild. As what? Whatever you want to be. His fingers brushed hers. Featherlight.
Testing.
Advisor.
Ally.
Friend. Is that what we are? Friends. I don't know. His voice dropped. I know I think about you constantly. Wonder if you're safe, if you're eating, if you regret not killing me when you had the chance. I know that when I look at you, I feel something I haven't felt since Elena died. Something that terrifies me. Arya's breath caught. What? Hope. He turned his hand palm up, an invitation. That maybe I can be more than what I've been. That maybe there's a way forward that doesn't end in loneliness and regret. She looked at his hand, at the calluses from sword work, the ink stains from endless documents, the scars from battles she didn't know about. A king's hand, a man's hand. She took it. His fingers closed around hers, warm and sure, and for a moment they just sat there, holding hands like children, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Tell me about Celeste, Cassian said. Your sister. So she did. Told him about the girl who loved stories and drew pictures in the margins of borrowed books, who dreamed of being a scholar despite being born Omega in a world that told her dreams were wasted on her designation. She sounds like you, Cassian said. She's better than me. Still believes the world can be good. We should bring her here, to the palace. Give her the education she wants. Arya's throat tightened. Why? Because she's your family. Because she deserves the opportunities Theron's system denied her. Because he stopped. Because I want to give you something that isn't pain or compromise. Something good. You don't owe me. I owe you everything. His grip tightened. You could have destroyed me. Instead, you gave me truth. That's a gift I can never repay. They sat in silence, hands linked, surrounded by garden shadows and starlight. And Arya felt something dangerous unfurling in her chest. Something that looked like forgiveness. Like possibility. Like the beginning of something that wasn't built on hate. There's a ball, Cassian said eventually. In 4 days. To celebrate the purification of the council. The nobles need reassurance that the kingdom is stable. Sounds tedious. Extremely, but necessary. He looked at her. I want you there. With me. Officially. As what? Your mistress? As my partner. My equal. His expression was fierce. Let them see that I value your counsel. That you're not some Omega plaything, but someone with intelligence, strength, and my complete respect. That will cause talk. Good. Let them talk. Let them see that things are changing. He raised her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. Will you come? The gesture was courtly, old-fashioned, reverent in a way his previous touches never had been. It made her heart stutter. Yes, she whispered. His smile was small but real. Good. They stayed in the garden until dawn began coloring the sky, talking quietly about Elena, about Arya's father, about the bloodstone, and what it meant. Building something fragile and precious in the space between their damaged pasts. When they finally rose to leave, Cassian kept hold of her hand. walked her back through the palace corridors as morning light spilled through windows. And when they reached her door, he hesitated. "I want to kiss you," he said quietly. But not like before. Not as king to Omega or captor to prisoner. As equals. He searched for words. As two people who see each other. Really see each other. Aria's pulse hammered. "Then do it." He cupped her face with both hands, his touch gentle, asking permission even now. Then he leaned in and kissed her. It was nothing like their previous encounters. No desperation. No empty need. Just soft and careful and real. A first kiss, even though they'd touched 1,000 times before. When he pulled back, his eyes were bright. Vulnerable. "Stay safe," he said.
Please.
"Theron's allies are still out there." "You too." He nodded once, then left. And Arya stood in her doorway, fingers pressed to her lips, feeling like the world had just shifted on its axis. The next 3 days passed in a blur. Cashin worked tirelessly to stabilize the council. New members were appointed, people with clean records and genuine desire to serve. Laws were reviewed, amended, softened. The Omega breeding registration program was suspended pending full repeal. Change was happening, slowly but visibly. Arya spent her time in the archives, researching the bloodstone with new urgency. If they were going to use it, if someone was going to sacrifice themselves, she needed to understand exactly what it did. What she found wasn't comforting. The ancient texts were clear. The lunar convergence would amplify the bloodstone's power enough to permanently alter designation biology across the entire kingdom. But the price was absolute. The wielder's life force would fuel the transformation. No exceptions. No loopholes. Someone would die to free everyone else. She was transcribing a particularly complex passage when Lyra found her. "We have a problem," she said without preamble. Arya looked up. "What kind?" "The military kind. General Vaughn, one of Theron's appointees, has taken 3 battalions and marched toward the capital. He's demanding Theron's release and the king's abdication." Cold dread pooled in Arya's stomach. When will they arrive? 2 days. Right before the ball. Lyra's expression was grim. "We have maybe 1,000 loyal soldiers in the capital. Vaughn has 3,000. And he's well-supplied, well-trained. What does Cashin say?" "He's preparing defenses. But we're outnumbered. If it comes to battle, we'll lose." Arya stood, her mind racing. There has to be another way. Negotiation, maybe. Or, there's no negotiating with Vaughn. He's a true believer in designation hierarchy. Thinks Omegas are property and Alphas are gods. He'll never accept the changes Cashin's making. Then we make him. Arya grabbed the bloodstone from where she'd been keeping it, wrapped in cloth, hidden in her research materials. The convergence is in 6 months. But maybe we don't need the full power. Maybe a smaller demonstration. Would do what? Kill you and change nothing? Would show them what's possible. Show Vaughn's soldiers that designation hierarchy isn't natural law. Arya's voice hardened. Fear keeps the system in place. If we break that fear, even temporarily, maybe they'll stand down. Or maybe you'll die for nothing. Maybe. Arya met her eyes. But I'm willing to try. Cashin will never allow it. Then we don't tell him until it's done. Lyra stared at her for a long moment. Then she sighed. "You've changed," she said quietly. 3 weeks ago, you wanted the king dead. Now you're planning to sacrifice yourself to save his throne. I'm not doing this for his throne. I'm doing it because if Vaughn wins, everything changes. Omega oppression gets worse. The council reverts to corruption. People suffer. Arya's hands tightened on the bloodstone. My father died, fighting the system. Elena died, researching how to break it. I won't let their deaths mean nothing. You're in love with him, Lyra said. Not a question. Arya wanted to deny it. Couldn't. Yes, she whispered. Does he know? I don't know. Maybe. She looked at the stone in her hands. But it doesn't matter. Some things are bigger than love. Lyra was quiet. Then, if you're going to do this, you'll need help. The bloodstone requires ancient words, a specific ritual, and it needs to be somewhere significant, a place where power converges. Where? The old temple, in the forest outside the city. It was built on a convergence point where ley lines meet. Elena's notes mentioned it. Lyra's expression was pained. I'll help you prepare. But Arya, if this goes wrong, if you die for nothing, then at least I died trying. That's more than most people get. The ball was scheduled for the following evening. Arya spent the day preparing, not just for the event, but for what would come after. Lyra helped her practice the ritual words, memorize the gestures. They had one shot at this. One chance to use the bloodstone's power without the full convergence. It might work. It might do nothing. It might kill her instantly. But it was the only plan they had. As evening approached, servants arrived with a dress. Not the simple clothes she'd been wearing. This was a gown fit for nobility. Deep green silk, embroidered with silver thread that caught the light like stars. From the king, the head servant said. He wants you to wear his family colors. Arya stared at it. Green and silver, the Blackthorn house colors. He was claiming her publicly, telling the nobility she was under his protection, his equal. She dressed carefully, her hands shaking. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. She looked like a lady, like someone who belonged in palace halls, like someone worth saving a kingdom for. A knock at her door. She opened it to find Cashin, dressed in formal black and silver, his crown gleaming on his dark hair. He looked devastating, powerful, every inch a king. His eyes widened when he saw her. Arya. Her name came out reverent. You're presentable, stunning. He stepped inside, closing the door. His hands came up to frame her face. You take my breath away. She smiled despite everything, despite knowing what she planned to do later. You clean up well yourself. The crown helps. He kissed her forehead. Gentle. Are you ready for this? The nobles will be watching, judging. Let them watch. That's my girl. The words landed like a brand. My girl. Possessive and protective at once. And Arya realized she didn't mind. Wanted to be his, in ways that had nothing to do with ownership and everything to do with choice. Cashin, she said softly, no matter what happens tonight. Nothing will happen. I have security everywhere. You'll be safe. But if something does, if things go wrong, she gripped his hands. Know that I don't regret this. Any of it. Not staying, not trusting you, not. Her voice broke. Not falling for you. His expression transformed. Hope and pain and something fierce. Say that again, he breathed. Which part? The last part. Arya's heart hammered. I've fallen for you. Despite everything. Despite how it started. I look at you and see. She searched for words. I see someone worth fighting for. Worth believing in. Cashin pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. I love you, he said against her ear. I know I shouldn't. I know it's too fast, too complicated. But I do. I love you, Arya Sylvanus. And I will spend every day proving I'm worthy of that gift. She clung to him, memorizing this moment. His heartbeat, his warmth, the way he held her like she was precious beyond measure. Because after tonight, everything might change. After tonight, she might be gone. I love you too, she whispered. They stood there, holding each other, until duty called them to the ballroom. Until they had to put on their public faces and pretend everything was simple. Until Arya had to prepare to break his heart to save his kingdom. The ballroom glittered like a cage made of diamonds. Arya stood beside Cashin at the top of the grand staircase, feeling hundreds of eyes on her. The nobles below were dressed in their finest, silks and jewels, and centuries of inherited wealth. And all of them were staring at the poor Omega who'd somehow become the king's chosen companion. She could hear the whispers. Bewitched him. Sylvanus's daughter. Scandal. Inappropriate. Cassion's hand found hers. Held tight. Breathe, he murmured. They can smell fear. I'm not afraid of them. I know. That's why they're afraid of you. He was right. The whispers weren't just scandalous. They were nervous. Because an Omega standing beside the king as an equal disrupted everything these people believed about natural order. Good. Cassion raised his voice, projecting to the crowd. Lords and ladies, thank you for attending tonight's celebration. As you know, recent weeks have brought significant changes to our council and government. Changes that were necessary to root out corruption and restore justice. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some approving, most uncertain. I know many of you are concerned about stability, Cassion continued. About tradition. About whether I'm fit to rule after everything that's been revealed. He paused. Those concerns are valid, and I address them now by introducing someone who has my complete trust and respect. He turned to Arya, his expression proud. This is Arya Sylvanus, daughter of Duke Aldrich Sylvanus, who was wrongly executed for treason he didn't commit. She has spent weeks helping me uncover the conspiracy that corrupted this kingdom, and she will serve as my chief advisor going forward. The ballroom erupted. Shouts of protest. Gasps of shock. One elderly lord actually fainted. Arya stood there, frozen, as chaos bloomed around them. Your Majesty, this is madness, someone yelled. She's an Omega. She's also brilliant, educated, and more loyal than half the people in this room. Cassion shot back. She stays. Non-negotiable. But the council serves at my pleasure, as do all of you. His voice went cold. Command absolute. Anyone who finds that arrangement unacceptable may leave. Permanently. Silence fell. Arya squeezed his hand once. Warning, gratitude, love, then stepped forward. I know what you think of me, she said, her voice carrying. That I seduced the king. That I'm a spy. That my father was a traitor. She met their eyes, unflinching. You're wrong about most of it. But here's something true. I came to this palace planning revenge. And I stayed because I found something worth saving. She gestured to Cassion. This king. This kingdom. The possibility that designation hierarchy doesn't have to define us forever. That Omegas can be more than breeding stock. That Alphas can choose kindness over dominance. That change is possible. Pretty words, a woman's voice called out. But words don't change biology. Don't change what we are. No, Arya agreed. But they can change what we do with what we are. Before anyone could respond, the ballroom doors burst open. Guards rushed in, their faces panicked. And behind them, soldiers.
Dozens of them, armed.
Wearing General Vaughn's colors. The crowd scattered, screaming. Cassion moved instantly, putting himself between Arya and the threat. His hand went to the sword at his hip. What is the meaning of this? He demanded. A man stepped through the soldiers. Tall, gray-haired, with a face carved from granite. General Vaughn. Your Majesty, he said, his voice dripping false respect. I've come to restore order. To free Lord Theron and the other council members you've imprisoned unjustly. They're not imprisoned unjustly. They're criminals. They're patriots who understood what you refused to accept, that Omegas need control. That tradition maintains stability. Vaughn's eyes flicked to Arya. And you've let one of them poison your mind. Seduce you into weakness. Choose your next words carefully, General. Or what? You'll have me arrested too? Vaughn smiled. I have 3,000 soldiers outside this palace. You have a few hundred. Surrender now. Abdicate peacefully, and I'll let you live in exile. Refuse, and we take the palace by force. The remaining nobles in the ballroom held their breath, waiting to see which side would win. Cashin stood taller.
No.
I'm sorry.
No.
I won't surrender. Won't abdicate. Won't let people like you drag this kingdom backward. His hand tightened on his sword. If you want my throne, General, you'll have to kill me for it. Vaughn's expression went flat. So be it. He raised his hand, signaling his men to attack. Everything exploded into chaos. Cashin fought like something feral. His sword flashed in the ballroom's crystal light, cutting down Vaughn's soldiers with brutal efficiency. Around him, his loyal guards fought desperately against overwhelming numbers. Arya was dragged behind a pillar by Lyra, who'd appeared from nowhere with a knife in each hand.
This is it, Lyra said.
Now or never. If we're going to use the bloodstone. I know. Arya pulled the stone from where she'd hidden it in her dress. It pulsed with light, responding to the violence around them. The temple? I'll cover you. Go. But Cashin will die if Vaughn's forces take the palace. You want to save him? Use the stone. Show everyone what's possible. Make them see designation hierarchy for the lie it is. Lyra gripped her shoulders. I'll hold them here as long as I can. Get to the temple. Do the ritual. And if you survive, come back and save us all. Arya nodded, tears burning her eyes. Then she ran. Through the chaos, through corridors filling with smoke and blood, out into the gardens and beyond. Behind her, she heard Cashin shout her name, heard him fighting to reach her. But Lyra would stop him, would make him focus on the battle, would buy Arya the time she needed, even if it meant lying to the king they both served. The forest was dark, moonless. Arya ran until her lungs burned, following paths Lyra had made her memorize. The temple appeared like a ghost, crumbling stone columns, overgrown with vines, ancient beyond measure. In its center, a stone altar. Arya climbed onto it, the bloodstone blazing in her hands. She could feel power thrumming through the ground beneath her. Ley lines converging. Energy waiting to be directed. She began the ritual words. Ancient Lorien, older than kingdoms. Calling on powers that predated designation hierarchy. That remembered when wolves and humans were just different expressions of the same soul. The bloodstone grew hot. Burning. She kept chanting. Light exploded outward from the stone, spreading through the forest, racing toward the capital. And Arya felt it, her life force being drawn into the magic, fueling the transformation. It hurt. Gods, it hurt. But she kept going. Kept channeling. Because this was it. This was the moment Elena had died trying to reach. The moment her father had believed was possible. The moment that could change everything. The light reached the palace, flooded through its walls. And for one crystalline moment, every designation in the capital equalized. Alphas lost their dominance. Omegas lost their submission. Everyone became just human. In the palace, Vaughn's soldiers faltered. The biological imperative to follow alpha commands gone. They looked at each other, confused. Free. And some of them lowered their weapons. Arya felt her consciousness fading. The ritual was taking too much, demanding more than she had to give. Worth it, she thought. If this works, if they see what's possible. Then someone grabbed her, strong hands pulling her off the altar, breaking the ritual. The light flickered, destabilized. Stop. What are you doing? She looked up through blurring vision and saw him. Cashin. He was covered in blood, not all his own, breathing hard, his eyes wild with panic and fury. You were killing yourself, he snarled. Did you really think I wouldn't notice you running? Wouldn't follow? The ritual, I need to finish. Not at the cost of your life. He grabbed the bloodstone from her hands, and it pulsed angrily, rejecting him. There has to be another way. There isn't. The texts are clear. Then the texts are wrong. He held her face, his hands shaking. You don't get to die. Not for me, not for the kingdom, not for anything. Do you hear me, Arya? I won't allow it. You don't get to decide. Yes, I do. I'm the king, and I'm ordering you to live. She wanted to laugh, wanted to cry. That's not how this works. Then tell me how it works. Tell me there's another option. Aria's vision swam. The partial ritual had drained her, left her weak.
But she'd seen something.
Felt something when the light had spread. 2 people, she whispered. If 2 people wield it together. Share the cost. The text mentioned it once. A bonded pair, combined life force. Cashin went still. How bonded? Mated.
True mates.
The kind of bond that transcends designation. Like Elena and I were. Like he stopped. Looked at her with dawning realization. Like what we're becoming. We're not mated yet. Not officially. Not with the ceremony and the bite and... Then we do it.
Now.
Here. His voice was absolute. I claim you. You claim me. And we wield this thing together. Cashin, you could still die. Then I die with you. Saving the kingdom we both love. Building the future your father and Elena dreamed of. He pulled her close. I'm not losing you, Arya. Not after finally finding you. So either we both live or we both die. Choose. She looked at him. This broken, beautiful king who'd somehow become her home. Who'd changed from monster to man in the space of a few weeks. Who loved her enough to die with her. Together, she breathed. Together. He kissed her then. Not gentle. Not careful. Desperate and claiming and real. And she felt it, the bond snapping into place. Recognized on some fundamental level that he was hers and she was his. Forever. He bit her neck, marking her. She bit him back. The ancient way. The way that said mine, yours, ours. Then they both gripped the bloodstone. The power hit like lightning. Doubled now, shared between them, but still devastating. Arya screamed. Cashin roared. And the light exploded outward again, brighter, stronger, reaching across the entire kingdom. She felt designations shift. Felt biological hierarchy crack and reform into something fluid, something chosen rather than inborn. Felt the world change. Then darkness took her, and she knew nothing more. Arya woke to pain. Not the burning agony of the bloodstone ritual, but a deep, bone-aching exhaustion that suggested her body had been pushed beyond its limits and barely survived. She was in a bed. Soft sheets.
Warm. Alive.
Alive. Memory flooded back. The temple. The ritual. Cashin arriving. Stopping her. The mating bond. Wielding the bloodstone together. Cashin. Here. She turned her head. Even that small movement hurt, and found him beside her. In a chair pulled close to the bed, looking like death warmed over. His face was pale, drawn, shadows under his eyes suggesting he hadn't slept in days. But he was breathing, moving,
alive.
You're okay, she whispered. Define okay. His smile was weak. But yes, we both survived. Barely. How long? 3 days. You've been unconscious for 3 days. His hand found hers gripping tight. I woke up yesterday. Spent every hour since then sitting here, waiting for you to open your eyes. Arya squeezed his hand back. The kingdom changed. Fundamentally. He helped her sit up, propping pillows behind her. The bloodstone ritual worked. Not completely, designation biology still exists. But it's fluid now. Omegas aren't compelled to submit. Alphas aren't driven to dominate. Everyone has choice. And Vaughn surrendered. When his soldiers suddenly weren't biologically bound to follow his alpha commands, most of them just stopped fighting. Laid down their weapons. Some left. Some stayed and asked to join the new order. Cashin's expression was complicated. Turns out a lot of them were just following instinct, not conviction. Without that instinct. Free will. Exactly. He paused. Vaughn himself is in a cell next to Theron. They'll both stand trial for their crimes. Along with 37 other nobles who were part of the conspiracy. Arya processed that. And the council? Rebuilding. Half are new appointments, people who actually care about justice. Lyra is leading the reform efforts. She's terrifying and efficient. He smiled slightly. Your sister is here, by the way. In the palace. She's been visiting every day, reading to you while you slept. Tears burned Aria's eyes. Celeste is safe. More than safe. She's enrolled in the Palace Academy, has already made 3 friends and intimidated 2 tutors with how much she knows. His thumb traced circles on her hand. She's extraordinary, like her sister. I need to see her.
Soon.
But first we need to talk. About what we did. What it means. Arya met his eyes. We're mated.
Yes.
Fully bonded. Which means several things. He counted on his fingers. 1. You're now officially the queen consort. The council ratified it while you were unconscious. Nobody dared oppose me with the bloodstone ritual fresh in their minds. 2. We need to have an actual wedding ceremony at some point because tradition and politics. 3. He stopped. 3. I love you more than I thought it was possible to love anyone. And I need you to understand what you've done. What I've done. You saved me. Saved the kingdom. Broke a system that had caused centuries of suffering. You're a hero, Arya. We did it together. You started it. Planned it. Risked everything. His voice roughened. And when I think about how close I came to losing you, how you were going to sacrifice yourself without even telling me, you would have stopped me. Damn right I would have. He leaned forward, his face inches from hers. Don't ever do that again. Don't ever decide my life is worth more than yours. We're partners now. Equals. That means we make these decisions together. Even if it means you die, even then, I'd rather die beside you than live without you. Arya's heart clenched. That's terrifying. That's love. He kissed her forehead. Gentle. Now rest. You're still recovering, and... A knock at the door interrupted him. Come in, Cashin called. Lyra entered, looking official in her new council robes. Behind her, Celeste. Her sister flew across the room, practically tackling Arya in an embrace. She was taller than Arya remembered, all gangly limbs and wild curls, smelling like books and ink. You're awake. Finally. I've been so worried, and they wouldn't let me stay overnight, and the healers kept saying you'd be fine, but you looked so pale, and Celeste pulled back, tears streaming. Don't ever scare me like that again. I'll try. Arya said, her own tears falling. Gods, look at you. You're practically grown. I'm 14, not a child.
But...
Celeste's indignant tone was undermined by how she clung to Arya's hand. The palace tutors say I'm ahead in everything except mathematics, but I'm working on it. And Lyra's been teaching me self-defense, and there's this library that has books I've only dreamed about, and she stopped, seeming to remember something.
Oh.
And congratulations on becoming queen. That's unexpected. Arya laughed, the sound rough but real. For me too. Cashin stood, giving them space. I'll let you two catch up. Lyra, walk with me? They left, and Celeste immediately climbed onto the bed, curling against Arya's side like she used to when she was small. I thought you were dead, Celeste whispered. When they brought you back from the forest, you were so pale, not breathing right. And the king looked, she shuddered. I've never seen anyone look like that, like his soul was dying. He's dramatic. He loves you. Celeste looked up at her. Really loves you. The way Papa loved Mama before she died. Like you're his whole world. Arya's throat tightened. Their parents had been true mates too. Had loved each other with a kind of devotion that made losing one unbearable for the other. Their mother had died of fever when Celeste was born. Their father had survived another 8 years, but part of him had gone to the grave with his mate. I love him too, Arya admitted, which is complicated considering he signed Papa's execution order? Celeste's voice was quiet. I know. Lyra told me everything. About Theron. About how Papa was framed. About how the king didn't know. Does that make it better? I don't know. Maybe. Celeste was quiet for a moment. Papa always said that good people could do terrible things if they trusted the wrong advisors. That kings were only as just as the counsel they kept. He wouldn't want you to hate someone who was manipulated. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You just didn't notice because you were busy planning revenge. Celeste poked her. But I'm glad you didn't go through with it. Glad you found something better than hate. Me too. They lay there in comfortable silence until Celeste eventually fell asleep, exhausted from days of worry. Arya held her sister and stared at the ceiling, processing everything that had changed. She was alive. Cashin was alive. The kingdom had transformed. And somehow, against all probability, she'd found not just justice but love. It felt too good to be real, which meant something would go wrong. It always did. The next morning, Arya was strong enough to walk. Cashin insisted on escorting her personally, ignoring the healer's protests that she should rest longer. They moved through the palace slowly, and Arya saw the changes everywhere. Omega servants moved with their heads up now. Not cowering. Not automatically submitting when alphas passed. Some still deferred. Habit and culture didn't change overnight, but others met eyes, spoke firmly, existed with dignity. In the training yards, she saw female soldiers drilling alongside male ones. Omegas and alphas sparring as equals. The biological compulsion that had made alphas naturally dominant in combat, gone. Now it was just skill against skill. It's working, she said softly. It's chaos, Cashin corrected, but productive chaos. The kind that might actually lead somewhere better. He guided her toward a building she hadn't seen before. There's something I want to show you. Inside was a chamber set up like a courtroom, and sitting in the defendant's box, flanked by guards. Theron. He looked smaller than she remembered, diminished by imprisonment and the loss of power. But his eyes still held calculation as they entered. Your Majesty, he said mockingly. And the little Omega who destroyed everything. How touching. You're being tried today, Cashin said flatly, for conspiracy, embezzlement, and the murders of Elena Blackthorne and Duke Aldrich Sylvanus, among others. Murders you can't prove. Actually, we can. Lyra stepped forward, carrying a box. Remember your personal safe? The one you thought only you could access? Arya wasn't the first person to break into it. I'd been photographing documents for years, including these. She pulled out letters, vials, chemical analysis reports. Poison, Lyra said. The same compound used to kill Elena. Found in your possession, along with correspondence detailing payment to the physician who administered it. And here, she held up another document. Evidence fabrication plans for Duke Sylvanus's treason trial. In your handwriting. Theron's face went gray. You're finished, Cashin said quietly. The council votes on your sentence this afternoon. Execution or exile, either way, you'll never hurt anyone again. You self-righteous fool. Theron's composure cracked. You think you've won? You think changing designation biology solves anything? You've destabilized centuries of order. Made Omegas think they're equal when they're just. Human, Arya interrupted. That's what you can't stand, isn't it? The idea that we're just people. That the hierarchy you profited from was a lie you convinced everyone to believe. It wasn't a lie. It was nature.
No.
It was biology you weaponized into oppression. She stepped closer to the defendant's box. My father saw through it. Elena saw through it. And now everyone will see through it. Your legacy isn't power, Theron. It's exposure as the small, petty man who murdered good people to maintain a comfortable lie. Theron lunged at the box's bars, snarling. Guards restrained him. Get him out of here, Cashin ordered. And make sure the trial is public. Everyone should see justice served. As Theron was dragged away, still screaming about tradition and natural order, Arya felt something release in her chest. Not quite closure. Her father was still dead, Elena was still gone, but acknowledgement. Recognition that the man who destroyed so many lives would finally face consequences. "Thank you," she said to Cassian, "for letting me see that. You deserve to face him, to see him powerless." He took her hand. "The trial will be brutal. Graphic details. Witness testimony. Are you sure you want to attend?"
Yes.
"I owe it to my father, to Elena, to everyone he hurt. Then we'll sit through it together." The trial lasted 3 days. Arya sat beside Cassian in the gallery, listening as witness after witness testified to Theron's crimes. The scope of the conspiracy was staggering. Decades of exploitation, murder, manipulation. At least 15 deaths could be directly attributed to Theron's orders. Elena's physician testified through tears, explaining how Theron had threatened his family unless he poisoned the queen. How he'd lived with guilt for 3 years, too terrified to speak. The council member who'd fabricated evidence against Arya's father confessed in exchange for clemency. Detailed exactly how they'd planted documents, bribed witnesses, constructed an airtight case against an innocent man. By the 3rd day, even Theron's most ardent supporters had gone silent. The council's verdict was unanimous. Execution. Cassian signed the order with a steady hand. No hesitation. When he set down the pen, he looked at Arya. "Is this justice?" he asked quietly. "Or just revenge?" "Both, maybe. Does it matter?" "I don't know. I just know that every time I sign an execution order now, I think about your father. About how I did this before without question. Without investigation." His jaw tightened. "It terrifies me. How easy it was to kill an innocent man. How close I came to never knowing the truth." Arya took his hand. "But you know now. And you're changing things. That's what matters." "Is it enough?" "I don't know. But it's something." Theron was executed at dawn the next day. Arya didn't attend. She'd seen enough death. But Cassian did, standing witness as the man who'd corrupted his kingdom took his final breath. When he returned, he looked older. Tired. But also lighter somehow. Like he'd set down a weight he'd been carrying too long. "It's done," he said simply. Arya pulled him into an embrace. He held her tight, his face buried in her hair, and they stood there in silence. Processing. Grieving. Accepting. 2 weeks later, Lyra found Arya in the archives. "We have a problem," she said. Arya looked up from the ancient texts she'd been studying. "What kind?" "The good kind, actually. The bloodstone ritual worked better than we expected. Designation fluidity is spreading beyond the capital. Reports are coming in from provinces across the kingdom, Omegas refusing traditional bonds, Alphas stepping back from leadership roles, entire social structures reorganizing." "That's good." "Yes. But also complicated. Some regions are embracing it. Others are resisting. And there's been violence. Traditionalists attacking Omegas who assert independence, progressive groups retaliating." Lyra's expression was grim. "We're on the verge of civil war. Different factions with different visions of what the kingdom should become." Arya's stomach dropped. "What does Cassian say?" "He's in emergency council sessions, trying to craft policies that acknowledge the changes without forcing conformity. But it's like trying to hold water. The situation keeps shifting." Lyra paused. "We need you. Your voice. The person who wielded the bloodstone and survived carries weight. If you speak about what we're trying to build." "I'm not a politician." "No. You're something better. You're someone who lived through the worst of the old system and fought to change it. People will listen to you in ways they won't listen to the king." Arya thought about her father, about Elena, about all the people who died fighting for change. "What do you need me to do?" "Tour the provinces. Speak to communities. Help them understand that designation fluidity doesn't mean chaos, it means choice. That we're not destroying tradition, we're evolving it. Lyra met her eyes. Be the bridge between what was and what could be. When would I leave? Tomorrow, ideally. The longer we wait, the worse the violence gets. Arya nodded slowly. I'll talk to Cashin. He didn't take it well. Absolutely not, Cashin said flatly. You nearly died 2 weeks ago. You're still recovering. And you want to travel through hostile territories where traditionalists would love to kill the person who corrupted their king. They were in his private chambers, the fire burning low. Arya had waited until they were alone to raise Lyra's proposal. I'm not asking permission, she said carefully. I'm telling you what I need to do. Then I'm telling you no. You can't forbid me. I'm your mate and your king. I can absolutely forbid you. Arya's eyes narrowed. Careful. That sounds like the old alpha dominance talking. Cashin flinched, took a breath. You're right.
I'm sorry.
But Arya, please. The provinces are dangerous right now. Unpredictable. If something happened to you, then you'd have loyal guards and healers with me. Lyra would come. We'd be careful. She moved closer, taking his hands. I know you're afraid. I am too. But we can't hide in the palace while the kingdom tears itself apart. We changed things. Now we have to guide those changes. Together. Together means you stay here, safe, where I can protect you.
No.
Together means we both do the hard thing. You handle the council and the nobility. I handle the people. We divide the work because it's too much for one person. She cupped his face. Trust me. Trust that I'm strong enough for this. Cashin closed his eyes, his jaw working. I can't lose you. You won't. I promise I'll come back. You can't promise that.
No.
But I can promise I'll fight like hell to keep that promise. She kissed him softly. Let me do this. Let me be your queen in more than name. He was silent for a long time. Then, 2 conditions. Name them. 1, Lyra and a full security detail go with you. Non-negotiable. Agreed. 2, you write me every day. Every single day. Or I'm writing out personally to drag you back.
Deal.
He pulled her close, holding her like he could keep her safe through sheer force of will. When do you leave? Tomorrow. Of course you do. He kissed the top of her head.
One more night, then.
Let me have one more night. They went to bed early. Not for sex, but for closeness. Lying tangled together, talking quietly about everything and nothing. About the future they were trying to build. About the family they might have someday. About hope and fear, and all the complicated emotions that came with loving someone during a revolution. Whatever happens, Cashin murmured as she drifted toward sleep, know that you changed my world. Made me better than I was. Gave me reasons to fight for something beyond survival. Same, Arya whispered back. You were supposed to be my enemy. Instead, you became my home. Poetic. Shut up and sleep, Your Majesty. His quiet laugh was the last thing she heard before darkness took her. Dawn came too fast. Arya dressed in travel clothes, practical, sturdy, nothing queenly about them. She braided her hair tight, checked her pack 3 times, tried not to look at Cashin, who was watching her with barely concealed anguish. I'll be back in 6 weeks, she said. Maybe 8 if the mountain provinces are difficult. 8 weeks is too long. It's necessary. I know. Doesn't make it easier. They walked together to the courtyard, where Lyra waited with 20 guards and a small caravan of supplies. Celeste was there too, looking fierce despite obvious worry. Stay safe, her sister said. And if anyone gives you trouble, remember what I taught you about knee strikes. You taught me that yesterday. And it's already invaluable knowledge. Arya hugged her tight. Study hard. Don't intimidate the tutors too much. No promises. Then Cashin pulled her aside, out of earshot. If at any point you feel unsafe, he said quietly, you send word. Immediately. I don't care if it compromises the mission or makes me look weak. Your life matters more than politics. I'll be careful. Not enough. Be paranoid. Suspicious. Ruthless. His hands framed her face. Be the survivor who endured everything to get here. That's the woman I need coming back to me. I will. I promise. He kissed her then, deep and claiming and desperate, pouring everything he couldn't say into that contact. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. I love you, he said. I love you too. Don't burn down the kingdom while I'm gone. No promises. She mounted her horse, settled into the saddle. Lyra gave the signal, and the caravan began moving. Arya looked back once, saw Cashin standing in the courtyard, backlit by rising sun, looking every inch the powerful king he was. But his eyes held only her, only fear and love, and the kind of faith that required daily choice. She raised her hand. He raised his. Then she turned forward and rode toward whatever waited in the provinces, toward danger and duty and the next chapter of the revolution they'd started together. Love is not standing still in safety, it's choosing to move forward into danger, because some missions are bigger than fear. Subscribe to Dia's Romance Library for stories where queens are forged in fire, and where the hardest part of partnership is learning to let go while holding on with everything you have. The provinces were worse than Arya had imagined. In some villages, they were welcomed as saviors. Omegas wept with gratitude, Alphas cautiously hopeful about a future where strength didn't require dominance. She spoke in town squares, explained the changes, listened to concerns. In others, they barely escaped with their lives. The fifth village they visited had seemed promising at first. The local lord invited them to dinner, expressed interest in the new policies. Then, halfway through the meal, guards surrounded them. You poisoned our way of life, the lord said coldly. Made Omegas think they're people. Made our children question natural order. For that, you'll die. They fought their way out. Lost 3 guards in the process. Arya still had nightmares about the young soldier who'd taken an arrow meant for her. By the 4th week, even Lyra looked exhausted. Maybe we should head back, she suggested as they made camp in yet another hostile territory. Regroup. Try a different approach. We're making progress, Arya insisted. Slowly, but we're making enemies. Every traditionalist lord we confront becomes another potential ally for whatever counter-revolution is brewing. Lyra stared into the fire. And there is one brewing. I can feel it. She was right. Arya had felt it too, the sense of something building. Whispers of a coalition forming. Lords and generals who rejected the Bloodstone's changes, who wanted to restore natural order. 3 more villages, Arya said. Then we'll go back. I promise. But that night, a messenger arrived. Exhausted. Bleeding from a wound in his side. He collapsed at Arya's feet, gasping. The capital, under siege. General Marcus, 3 armies. Arya's blood went cold. How long? Started 2 days ago. The king, holding, but the messenger's eyes rolled back. He passed out. Their healer rushed forward, but Arya was already moving. Pack everything. We ride for the capital. Now. That's a 5-day journey at speed, Lyra protested. And we don't know what we're riding into. Cashin is under attack. That's all I need to know. Within an hour, they were riding hard through the darkness, pushing horses to their limits, racing against time and fear and the terrible certainty that everything they'd built was about to burn. They reached the capital on the 3rd day and found a war zone. 3 armies surrounded the palace, thousands of soldiers bearing the colors of traditionalist houses. Siege engines battered the walls. Fires burned in the lower city. And over it all, a banner flew that made Arya's heart stop. Black Wolf on red field. General Marcus Vaughn's cousin and successor. He's come for revenge, Lyra breathed. For Theron. For Vaughn. For the old order. Arya studied the siege lines, her tactical training kicking in. Can we break through? Not directly. But there's a smuggler's tunnel, leads under the eastern wall, into the palace undercroft. If it's not collapsed. Show me. They left the horses with half their guards and moved on foot. Through rubble and smoke. Past bodies, both soldiers and civilians. The siege had turned parts of the capital into a killing ground. The tunnel entrance was hidden in a burned-out tavern. They descended into darkness, moving by touch and memory. The walls were slick with moisture, the air thick with the smell of earth and old death. If this collapses, one guard muttered, we're dead. Then move faster, Arya said. They emerged in the palace undercroft. Immediately, sounds of battle echoed from above, sword against sword, screaming, the crash of something massive hitting stone. Arya raced upward, taking stairs 3 at a time. Lyra and the guards followed. They burst into a corridor filled with fighting. Palace guards defending desperately against invaders in Marcus's colors. Blood on marble floors. Bodies piled against walls. Arya grabbed a sword from a fallen guard and dove into the fight. She wasn't trained like Cassian or Lyra, but desperation made her efficient. She fought with everything, sword, fists, teeth when necessary. Protecting guards, clearing paths, moving deeper into the palace. Toward the throne room. Toward Cassian. They reached it to find the doors barricaded from inside. Massive furniture piled against them. Through the wood, she could hear continued fighting. Break it down, Arya ordered. Her guards slammed into the doors.
Once. Twice.
On the third impact, the barricade shattered. Inside was carnage. The throne room had become a last stand. Cassian fought at the center, surrounded by his remaining loyal guards, maybe 40 left. They were vastly outnumbered by Marcus's forces, easily 200 soldiers pressing in. But Cassian was magnificent. Even exhausted, even bleeding from a dozen wounds, he fought like something divine. His sword flashed, cutting down enemies with brutal precision. Around him, his guards held their formation, protecting each other, refusing to break. Then Cassian's eyes found hers across the room. For one heartbeat, his control slipped. Relief and love and desperate hope flooded his expression. Arya. A soldier used his distraction, swinging hard. Cassian barely blocked, forced backward. Focus on the fight. Arya screamed. I'm here, I'm alive, so keep living, damn you. She charged into the fray, Lyra at her side. Their reinforcements crashed into Marcus's soldiers from behind, creating chaos in the enemy ranks. The tide shifted. Not much, but enough. Arya fought her way toward Cassian, leaving bodies in her wake. When she finally reached him, he grabbed her with his free hand, pulled her close for one fierce moment. You came back, he gasped. Always. Now, where's Marcus? Command tent. Outside. Coward won't face me directly. Then we bring the fight to him. Cassian's smile was feral. That's my queen. Together, they rallied the defenders. Pushed toward the throne room doors. The plan was insane. Charge out into the siege lines, fight through to Marcus's command tent, and this with a single strike. But insane was all they had left. They burst through the doors and into hell. The palace grounds were packed with enemy soldiers. Thousands. The moment Cassian appeared, they roared and charged. For the kingdom, Cassian bellowed. For freedom, his guards answered with their own war cry and followed. The fighting became a blur. Arya lost track of time, of individual enemies, of everything except survival and the need to reach that command tent. She fought beside Cassian, their movements synchronized through the mating bond. When he was open on the left, she covered. When she was pressed too hard, he was there. They moved as one entity. deadly and devoted in equal measure. Then they broke through. The command tent stood before them, guarded by Marcus's elite soldiers. But nothing could stop them now. They cut through the guards and burst inside. Marcus stood over a map table, confident and calm. He was younger than his cousin Vaughn, but carried the same rigid certainty in designation hierarchy. "Your Majesty," he said mockingly. "Come to surrender?" "Come to end you," Cassian said. "With what army?" "I have thousands. You have dozens. I have something better." Cassian pulled the bloodstone from his jacket. It pulsed with light, responding to the violence around them. "I have the power to equalize your entire force. Make them all human. Watch them choose whether to keep fighting for your crusade or go home to their families." Marcus's confidence flickered. "You're bluffing. Using the bloodstone requires the lunar convergence. That's months away. The full power, yes, but a temporary surge." Cassian looked at Arya. She nodded. "That just requires two true mates willing to share the cost." Together, they gripped the stone. Power exploded outward, washing over the siege lines. Every soldier on the battlefield felt it, designation hierarchy flickering, biological imperatives dissolving. For one crystalline moment, they were all just people. And in that moment, many of them stopped fighting, laid down their weapons, looked around at the blood and death, and asked themselves why they were really here. Not everyone. Some true believers kept fighting. But enough stopped that Marcus's overwhelming numbers suddenly looked vulnerable. Cassian released the bloodstone, swaying. Arya caught him, her own strength failing. "It's over, Marcus," she said. "Call the retreat. End this before more people die for a lie." Marcus stared at them, at his fragmenting army, at the reality that he was losing. Then he drew a hidden dagger and lunged at Cassian. Arya moved on instinct, threw herself between them, felt the blade sink into her shoulder instead of Cassian's heart. Pain exploded through her. She gasped, stumbling. Behind her, Cassian roared, moved faster than should have been possible for someone so exhausted. His sword took Marcus's head before the general even realized what happened. Then Cassian was catching Arya as she collapsed, his face twisted with anguish. "No, no, no, stay with me. Don't you dare." "I'm okay," she managed. "Just a shoulder wound. I've had worse." "You shouldn't have to have any." His hands pressed against the wound, trying to stop the bleeding. "You were supposed to stay safe in the provinces. And let you die here alone? Not happening." He laughed, choked and broken. "Stubborn, reckless woman. You love me for it." "I do. God's help me, I do." Around them, the battle was ending. Marcus's forces surrendering or fleeing. Palace guards securing the area. Lyra appeared, directing healers toward the wounded. "We won," Arya said faintly. "We actually won." "We survived," Cassian corrected. "Winning comes later. After we heal. After we rebuild. After I properly chain you to the palace, so you never do anything this terrifying again. You can try." "Oh, I will. I'm the king. I'm excellent at being controlling and overprotective when properly motivated." She smiled up at him, her vision blurring with pain and exhaustion. "I love you. I love you too. Now stop talking and let the healers work before I lose my mind." She wanted to argue, wanted to stay conscious and watch the aftermath of what they'd accomplished. But darkness was pulling at her, and Cassian's arms were steady, and she was so very tired. So she let go, and trusted that when she woke, he'd still be there. He always was. 6 months later, Arya stood on the palace balcony, watching the city celebrate. Below, the streets were filled with people, all designations, all classes, moving together without the rigid hierarchy that had defined them for centuries. There was still structure, still organization, but it was chosen now, not enforced by biology. "They're happy," Cassian said, joining her. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. When was the last time this city was genuinely happy? Before your time, probably. Maybe mine too. Then we broke the cycle. He kissed her temple. Together. The past 6 months had been chaos. Rebuilding the capital. Negotiating with provinces that still resisted change. Establishing new laws that acknowledged designation fluidity while not forcing conformity. Trials for war criminals. Reconciliation efforts. And through it all, they'd work side by side. King and queen. Partners. Aria's shoulder had healed, though it ached in cold weather. Cashin's wounds had scarred, but they were alive.
Whole.
Together. The lunar convergence is tonight, Aria said quietly. I know. They'd been avoiding this conversation for weeks. The full convergence, when the Bloodstone's power would be at its peak. When they could make the changes permanent instead of temporary. When someone would have to die to wield it. We don't have to do it, Cashin said. The temporary surges have been enough. People are adapting. We could just let it be. But it's not permanent. Not secure. Designation biology still exists. Future generations could revert. Everything we've built could collapse. I know. So we have to decide. Tonight. Cashin turned her to face him. His eyes held all the love and fear and determination that had defined their relationship from the start. I've thought about this every day, he said. About what Elena wanted. What your father believed. What we've sacrificed to get here. And I've realized something. What? The Bloodstone doesn't require death. It requires life force. Complete, absolute giving. But he paused. What if we're wrong about it being fatal? What if two true mates, fully bonded, could share that cost and survive? The texts say. The texts were written before designation fluidity existed. Before the Bloodstone had been used to create partial changes. His grip tightened on her hands. We've already done the impossible twice. Survived wielding it together. What if we can do it again? Aria wanted to believe it. Wanted to think they could complete Elena's vision without dying. But hope was dangerous. And if we're wrong, she asked, if we both die tonight, then we die free. Knowing we changed the world. Knowing we loved each other. He pressed his forehead to hers. But I don't think we will. I think the Bloodstone responds to intention. And our intention is to live. To build. To see the future we're creating. That's optimistic. You make me optimistic. She laughed softly. Since when? Since you walked into my life and refused to be broken. Showed me that endurance is its own form of strength. That recognition matters more than dominance. That love is choosing someone every day, even when it's hard. Aria's eyes burned. Those are our vows, aren't they? For the actual wedding ceremony, we keep postponing. If you'll still have me, despite everything, despite who I was when we met. You're not that man anymore. And I'm not the girl who came here for revenge. She kissed him softly. We're something new. Something we built together. So, that's a yes to the wedding? Yes to the wedding. Yes to the Bloodstone. Yes to tonight. Yes to, she stopped. There's something I need to tell you first. Cashin's expression grew concerned. What? Aria took his hand and placed it on her stomach. Flat still, showing nothing. But beneath her skin, something new was growing. I'm pregnant, she whispered. He went completely still. What? About 2 months. I found out last week. The healer confirmed it yesterday. Tears slipped down her cheeks. Which means if we use the Bloodstone tonight, if something goes wrong, then we don't use it. His voice was absolute. Not with you carrying our child. Not risking 3 lives instead of 2. But the kingdom will survive with temporary surges for another 60 years until the next convergence. Our child won't. He cupped her face. I won't sacrifice you and our baby for permanence. Some things matter more than completing the mission. Arya closed her eyes, relief and guilt warring inside her. She'd been terrified to tell him. Terrified he'd insist they go through with it anyway. Elena would understand, Cashin said softly. She'd want us to choose life.
Choose family.
The Bloodstone's purpose was never death. It was freedom. And we've given people that. Shown them what's possible. The rest will unfold in time. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. They stood there as the sun set, holding each other, feeling the new life growing between them. 3 heartbeats instead of 2. Below, the celebration continued. People dancing, singing, living in ways that had been impossible before the Bloodstone ritual. Change had come. Not complete. Not permanent yet, but real. And sometimes that was enough. The wedding happened a month later. Small, intimate, just the council, close friends, and Celeste, who cried through the entire ceremony. They exchanged vows under an ancient oak in the palace gardens, the same tree where Cashin had first told Arya he felt hope. I promise to choose you, Cashin said, his voice steady. Every day, in moments of peace and moments of crisis, when you're easy to love and when you're impossible. I promise to see you, really see you, the way you saw me when no one else could. Arya's hands shook as she spoke her own vows. I promise to endure with you, not for you. To stand beside you as an equal. To recognize your strength and hold space for your vulnerability. To build a future worthy of everyone who died dreaming of it. When they kissed, the assembled crowd cheered, and Arya felt something settle in her chest.
Peace.
Belonging. Home. 8 months after the wedding, their daughter was born. They named her Elena Aldera. Elena for Cashin's lost mate. Aldera, a variation of Aldric, for Arya's father. She's perfect, Cashin whispered, holding the tiny baby with infinite care. She has your eyes. She has your stubborn chin. Arya countered from the bed, exhausted but smiling. Celeste peered over Cashin's shoulder, her expression odd. She's so small. Can I hold her? Carefully. As her sister held the baby, Arya watched Cashin's face. Saw the wonder.
There.
The fierce protectiveness. The love so absolute it transformed him. What are you thinking? She asked. That she'll grow up in a world we changed. Where her designation won't define her destiny. Where she can be anything, scholar, warrior, queen, or just herself. His voice roughened. Where she'll never have to endure what you endured. Or what Elena endured. Or my father. Exactly. He sat on the bed beside her, careful not to jostle. We didn't make it perfect, but we made it better. Good enough?
For now.
And we have time to keep improving. Celeste handed the baby back to Cashin, who cradled her like she was made of glass. Elena Aldera yawned, tiny and fierce, and Arya felt her heart expand impossibly. Tell me a story, she said to Cashin, about what her world will be like. He thought for a moment, his eyes distant. In her world, designation will be a fact, not a prison. Omegas will lead councils and armies. Alphas will write poetry and raise children. Betas will stop being invisible middle children of the hierarchy. Everyone will just be. That's ambitious. We're ambitious people. He smiled. In her world, there will be problems. Different ones. Humans will still be complicated, still hurt each other, still struggle with power and fear. But the biological cage will be broken. What people do with that freedom, that's up to them. And us. We guide. We govern. We show them it's possible. He looked at their daughter. And we raise this one to be stronger than both of us. To carry the work forward when we're gone. Arya reached out, touching Elena's impossibly soft cheek. No pressure, little one. The baby made a sound that might have been agreement or protest. It was impossible to tell. They stayed in that room for hours, just the 3 of them, soon to be 4 when Celeste returned with food and refused to leave. talking quietly about names and futures and all the mundane concerns of new parents. But underneath it all, Arya felt the weight of what they'd accomplished. Two broken people who'd found each other in the worst circumstances, who'd survived assassination attempts, battles, political coups, and their own demons, who'd changed the fundamental structure of their world because neither of them could accept the way things were. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There was no happily ever after waiting for them, just the hard work of governance, the ongoing struggle to maintain change, the reality that some people would always resist progress. But it was real, honest, built on recognition and endurance, and the kind of love that chose to stay even when leaving would have been easier. "I'm glad I didn't kill you," Arya said suddenly. Cashin laughed, startled. "That's romantic. I'm serious. That first night or the second, or any of the times when I could have. I'm glad I chose differently." "Me too." He leaned over, kissed her forehead. "Because everything good in my life came from that choice. From you deciding I was worth something other than revenge. You are worth more than revenge. You are worth transformation. So were you." Elena stirred between them, making tiny noises. Cashin rocked her gently, his expression soft in a way that would have seemed impossible 6 months ago. "She's going to be trouble," Celeste predicted. "Both her parents are stubborn, reckless, and terrible at following rules. This child will be chaos incarnate." "Good," Arya and Cashin said simultaneously. They looked at each other and smiled. 2 years later, the anniversary of Theron's execution had become a national holiday. Liberation Day, they called it. The day when the Bloodstone ritual had begun transforming their world. People celebrated with festivals, speeches, gatherings where Omegas and Alphas shared stories of how their lives had changed. Arya stood in the palace gardens, watching Elena toddle after butterflies while Cashin followed at a careful distance, ready to catch her when she inevitably fell. "She's fearless," Lyra said, joining Arya. The council member looked tired but satisfied. "Takes after her mother. And her father. Have you seen him in council meetings? Still terrifying when he needs to be."
"Good.
We need that." Lyra's expression grew serious. "There's something you should know. We've received reports from the southern provinces. A group calling themselves the Restoration Alliance is gaining support. They want to reverse the Bloodstone's effects. Return to natural order." Arya's stomach tightened. "How large?" "Maybe a few thousand. Growing slowly. Nothing like Marcus's army, but it's not over," Arya finished. "It never really is it?"
"No.
Change always has resistance. Always will." Lyra paused. "But we have something they don't. We have proof that another way is possible. 2 years of people choosing their own paths, living their own truths. That's harder to fight than ideology. Is it enough? I don't know. But it's something." Lyra smiled slightly. "Besides, you and Cashin have faced worse. If the Restoration Alliance becomes a real threat, you'll handle it. We shouldn't have to keep fighting."
"No."
"But that's the price of revolution. The first generation that changes things rarely gets to rest in what they've built. They're too busy defending it." Arya watched Cashin scoop up Elena as she stumbled, his laughter carrying across the garden. Watched her daughter's face light up with joy. Watched peace and love and normalcy that hadn't existed 2 years ago. "It's worth it," she said quietly. "The fighting, the cost, all of it. Because look what we have now. A world slightly less terrible than the one we started with. A world with possibility. That's more than most people get." That night, after Elena was asleep, Arya found herself in the archives again. She'd been avoiding them lately, too busy with governance, with motherhood, with the endless demands of being queen. But tonight, something pulled her back to the old texts. She found the Bloodstone's container, still secured in her private study. The stone itself pulsed faintly, responding to her presence. We're not done yet, are we? She whispered to it. The stone's light flickered. Agreement, maybe. Or warning. There would be another lunar convergence in 58 years. Another chance to make the changes permanent. But she and Cashin would be old by then, possibly dead. Elena would be in her prime. The work would fall to her daughter. To the next generation. Not fair, Arya said. She shouldn't have to carry this. But life was rarely fair. Elena would grow up knowing what her parents had done, what they'd sacrificed. She'd understand the weight of legacy in ways most children never had to. And maybe that was okay. Maybe that's how change really happened. One generation pushing as far as they could, then passing the work to the next. Talking to rocks now. Arya turned to find Cashin in the doorway, wearing sleep clothes and a knowing smile. Contemplating responsibility and legacy, she corrected. At midnight? That's very dramatic of you. I learned from the best. She gestured to the bloodstone. Were you ever tempted? To use it that night during the convergence? Risk everything for permanence. Every moment. He moved closer, wrapping his arms around her from behind. But then I thought about you. About our daughter. About how Elena wanted change, but she also wanted life. Wanted the future she was fighting for to actually exist, not just be a noble sacrifice. Do you think we made the right choice? I think we made the only choice we could live with. Literally. He rested his chin on her shoulder. And if 58 years from now, Elena decides to complete what we started, that's her choice. Her burden. We can't carry everything for her. I want to protect her from it. I know. But we can't. We can only prepare her, teach her, love her, and trust that she'll be strong enough when her time comes. Arya closed her eyes, leaning back against him. When did you become wise? About the same time you stopped wanting to kill me. We've both grown. She laughed softly, turned in his arms. Take me to bed, Your Majesty. I'm tired of thinking about the future. I want to exist in the present for a while. With pleasure, Your Majesty. They left the archives hand in hand, the Bloodstone's light fading behind them. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, reports of the Restoration Alliance, council disputes, provinces requesting aid. The work of governance never ended. But tonight was theirs. Tonight was soft sheets and quiet laughter and the comfortable intimacy of people who'd survived held together and come out stronger. Tonight was enough. Years later, Elena Aldera Blackthorn stood before the council at age 20, her dark hair braided like her mother's, her gray eyes sharp like her father's. I'm volunteering, she said firmly, for the next convergence. When it comes, I'll wield the Bloodstone. Arya, now in her 40s with silver threading through her hair, stood from her seat.
No.
Mother. I said no. You don't understand what you're offering. What it costs. I understand perfectly. You and Father taught me. Elena's voice was steady. You showed me that some things are worth dying for. That change requires sacrifice. That your parents are idiots who got lucky, Cashin interrupted. He looked older too, tired but still powerful. Elena, please. We didn't survive the Bloodstone ritual, so you could throw your life away. You didn't survive it, so I could hide from responsibility either. Elena met their eyes, unflinching. I've spent my whole life hearing stories about what you did, about the world you changed, about the cost you paid. And I've decided I want to finish it, make it permanent, so my children and their children never have to fight this battle again. Arya's throat closed. She recognized that determination, had felt it herself once, standing in a palace she'd infiltrated to kill a king. You have 20 years until the convergence, she said finally.
Learn.
Train. Research. And if you still want to do this when the time comes, she looked at Cashin, who nodded reluctantly. We'll support you. But we'll also spend those 20 years trying to find another way. There isn't another way. You know that. Maybe. But we're going to look anyway. Arya moved forward, pulling her daughter into an embrace. Because you're my baby, and I will fight the laws of magic itself before I let you go, without exhausting every possibility. Elena hugged her back, fierce and tight. I love you too, Mama. Then stay alive. Give us those 20 years. That's all I ask.
Deal.
The final night. 20 years passed faster than Arya expected. Elena had trained, studied, prepared. She'd found her own mate, a brilliant Omega scholar who matched her in intelligence and stubbornness. They'd had 2 children of their own, both growing up in a world that was better than the one Arya had known. Not perfect. Never perfect. The Restoration Alliance had been defeated, but other challenges had emerged. Designation fluidity was accepted in most regions, resisted in others. Change was slow, uneven, frustrating, but real. And tonight, during the lunar convergence, Elena would make it permanent. Arya stood in the old temple, watching her daughter prepare. Elena looked calm, resolved. Her mate stood beside her, ready to share the cost just as Arya and Cashin had done decades ago. Last chance to change your mind, Arya said softly. I'm not changing my mind. Elena smiled. You and Father bought us time. Showed us it was possible. Now I'm finishing what you started. You don't have to. Yes, I do. Because I have children. Because I want them to grow up in a world where this work is done, not just delayed. Elena touched her mother's face. You gave me everything, Mama. Now let me give something back. Cashin appeared beside Arya, his hand finding hers. They were in their 60s now, still strong, but feeling their age. This would likely be the last great moment of their lives, watching their daughter complete their legacy. We're proud of you, Cashin said, his voice rough. More than you'll ever know. I know. Elena hugged them both. Thank you. For everything. For changing the world enough that I could have this choice. Then she stepped onto the altar with her mate, raised the bloodstone, and began the ritual. Light exploded outward, brighter than Arya remembered. Stronger. This was the full convergence, all the power the stone had ever held, channeled through 2 people who loved each other completely. Arya felt the wave pass through her, designation biology rewriting itself permanently. No more temporary surges. No more uncertainty.
Just choice.
Pure, absolute choice about what you were and what that meant. The light faded. Elena and her mate collapsed, unconscious but breathing.
Alive.
They'd done it. Survived wielding the bloodstone at full power. Completed the transformation Elena had died believing in, that Arya's father had fought for, that Elena Aldera had finished. It's over, Arya whispered. It's actually over. Cashin pulled her close, and they stood there as healers rushed to help their daughter. As the world shifted on its axis one final time. Not over, Cashin corrected softly. Complete. There's a difference. He was right. The work of building a better world would continue. There would be new challenges, new struggles, new battles. But the fundamental fight, the battle to break designation hierarchy, was won.
Permanently.
Arya looked at her daughter, breathing steadily, her mate beside her, both of them alive and whole and victorious.
We did it, she said.
All of us. Together. Yes, Cashin agreed. We did. Arya Blackthorn died at age 78, surrounded by family. Her daughter held one hand. Cashin held the other. Her grandchildren stood at the foot of the bed, trying to be brave. Tell them, she whispered to Elena. Tell them how it started. Mama.
Please.
They should know. So Elena told the story. About the poor Omega who'd infiltrated a palace to kill a king. About the frozen king who'd forgotten how to be human. About how they'd found each other in darkness and built something extraordinary from pain and recognition and endurance. That's who your grandmother was, Elena finished, tears streaming. Someone who turned revenge into revolution. Who chose love when hate would have been easier? Who changed the world because she refused to accept it as it was? Arya smiled, her vision fading. Good story. Your story, Mama. Our story. Mine and your father's. And now yours. And theirs. She looked at her grandchildren. Keep telling it. Keep fighting. The world will always need people who refuse to accept cruelty as natural. We will, they promised. Cashin leaned close, his face lined with age and grief. I'll see you soon, he whispered. Wait for me. Always, Arya breathed. Then she closed her eyes and let go. She died knowing she'd mattered, that her pain had purpose, that the world she left behind was better than the one she'd entered. And in the end, that was enough. Cashin followed her 6 months later. They were buried together in the palace gardens, under the oak tree where they'd first connected, where he'd told her he felt hope, where everything had changed. Their tombstone was simple. Arya Sylvanus Blackthorn and Cashin Blackthorn she endured. He recognized. Together they transformed. And beneath, in ancient Lorien, some bonds transcend designation. Some love transcends death.
The end.